Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to do our dinner prep for our meal later tonight. So we are going to prep our pot roast to go in the oven, and then we are actually going to make some sourdough bagels for tomorrow. And Evie decided she wanted to help us today. So let's start with our bagels here. We are going to turn on our scale, let it tar out, and then we are going to add 150 grams of active starter. So, see how cool that is? Nice and bubbly. Mm-hmm. So we've got our starter. I fed it this morning, so it's nice and active and bubbly. And we are going to add in 100 grams. Do you want to help me pour it, Evie? Okay, you got it? And we need 150 grams of starter. Not 100. That's what I use for my bread. A little bit more. And we're going to go all the way to 150. Perfect. Okay. So we have 150 grams. We're going to bring this back to 0. And now we're going to add 250 grams of warm water. So you want to pour this in, and I'll tell you when to stop, okay? We're going to see when that scale down there. Whoop. Here, no problem. Right up there. We're going to stop when it gets to 2 or 100 or 250. We're at 203. Ready? A little bit more. 232. Ooh, almost. Good. Close enough. Okay, so we've got warm water and then our starter. Do you want to grab a paper towel and we can wipe that up so nobody slips? Because it will be me who goes down. And then we're going to add 40 grams of sugar. Got it? Perfect. Okay. Now you ready to add some sugar, Eves? So we're going to pour it in, and when that number says 40, you're going to stop, okay? Pretty close. 42. Okay, so we've got our starter, our active starter. We've got our water, and we've got our sugar in there. We're going to mix it up. I'll let you do the honors. I will say if a 9-year-old can do it, you guys can do it too. So we're mixing it up until it's all completely dissolved. This way the bread flour will go into it nicely. Good job. Now we're going to add 500 grams of unbleached bread flour to the mix and 11 grams of salt. Okay. You ready for the salt? Mm-hmm. We need just a little bit because it's about 2 teaspoons. So you ready to shake it with me? I'm going to tell me when it gets to 11. You ready? There we go. There's 11 grams of salt. And now we need 500 grams of unbleached bread flour. So you can scoop this in. You need about 3 scoops. So you can put it in there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and another scoop, not a full one. Like this? You can try that yet? Almost. Do another one more. And perfect. Okay. Now we get to use our dough whisk again. And you're going to whisk that up. You want to mix it for me? Mm-hmm. And that's all you do. This is going to be our dough thing. And then we're going to practice kneading it in just a second. Yeah, I'll let you knead it because that will be fun. It'll be like Play-Doh. And we're going to mix it together until we have a good dough form. So I'm going to give you a little elbow grease. Where your bagel dough is not going to be as sticky as your regular sourdough. And that's because, your sourdough is just, the bagels are a little bit different than bread because we're going to boil them and then bake it. So you don't want quite as sticky of a dough. So we've got it here. And then I'm going to start the kneading process for you, Evie, and then you can finish it, okay? So we're going to flip our whole dough out here. Now, the reason you use warm water is so that the flour will incorporate into it well. And then we are just going to do a simple knead where we're pushing into the counter like this. And I'm just going to give it a tad bit more flour since it's just a little sticky. About a pinch more. Okay, Eve, so you ready to try this? So I want you to knead it by pushing in like this. So we're going to do that over and over. It might stick to you just a little bit, but that should be fine. Good job. And the trick with having the best bagels is to knead it for a while. So over the next 30 minutes, about every 10 minutes, we're going to give it a good 3 to 4 minute knead. And then we'll let it sit for 30 minutes and do our stretch and folds for 2 hours. But you really want to knead it in the beginning to give you that the best dough as possible. And if you have kids, this is a great thing for them because it's fun. It's like playing with Play-Doh. I'm going to wash my hands as she kneads our dough. And she's just going to just knead it back and forth, push it down, fold it in. And essentially the kneading is help developing the gluten in the bread so that you have a nice elastic, soft but chewy bagel versus a hard one. Okay, while you do that kneading, if you get tired, you can always stop, Evie, no worries. I'm going to start over here with our pot roast, but let me grab my oil. I forgot to set that out. Here we go. So I'm going to put about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of oil into my Dutch oven. And then I'm going to cut up my pot roast here. So this is a chuck roast, and I'm going to cut it into smaller pieces. And what we're going to do is we're going to sear these pieces off and give them a nice brown skin on it so that they will stay their shape together in your pot roast. Otherwise, what happens when you slow cook chuck roast, after a while, it tends to fall completely apart. And so I like to give it a nice little sear off so you'll have nice big chunks of meat versus just all string. So we're going to cut this into about 7 big chunks. We're done with our cleaver. And this is my meat touching hand. This is my clean hand. And what we're going to do is we're going to just coat each one with a little bit of salt. Perfect. And I'm using garlic salt because it has a bit more flavor. And then we're going to coat it with a little bit of black pepper. And that's just because when I sear off my meat, I want to have a little salty peppery sear on it that will really stay with the meat. We're going to make a delicious kind of seasoning for them with some onions and celery and carrots. So let's see if our Dutch oven is nice and hot. There we go. We want to let it get to a nice hot thing. I'm going to wash my hands and then grab some tongs. How's the kneading going, Evie? Good. Good. Is it fun? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like playing with Play-Doh. Sticky. Okay. You got it? Mm-hmm. So now what we're going to do, why don't you roll it into a big ball? Perfect. And then I'm going to put a little flour underneath it. And you can rest it right there on top of that flour. That way it won't completely stick. And then we can come over here and you can help me over here. Okay, so we've got our oil nice and hot. I can see it starting to bubble. So what we're going to do is we're going to put each of these in here using our tongs. You think you can do that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe. You just pinch it. Hard. Yep. So just plop them each in there. Good job. See? This is why you train them young, so they'll be cooking dinner for you in no time. This one's a big one. Yeah. We got a piece of chunk for everyone. There we go. That's one. Perfect. Okay, that's okay. We'll just slide it around. You want to make sure each part of it is touching. Yeah, it wasn't hard, was it? It's touching our thing. Now we are going to cut up our carrots and our celery and our onions. Apparently I forgot to grab a knife. No worries. Okay, I'm going to use this because it's got a sharp knife, so I'm going to do this part, okay, Yves? Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to cut off, and we're going to just take this whole big part of our onion out. And it looks like this was a little bit of a bruised onion, so I'm just going to cut off that bruise. And then we're going to do a small dice on our onions. Because what we want to do is we're going to be cooking this up, and we're kind of having a small dice on the onions and the carrots and the celery, and the meat is going to really stew in those veggies to give it a really delicious flavor, but they'll also kind of reduce down to a lovely kind of gravy. There we go. Okay, let's see. We're going to flip these upside so we got a nice brown sear on it. We're going to flip them over until they're all cooking right there. And there we go. We'll let them sear off. We've got our onions chopped up. Now we're going to do our celery. I'm going to slice them all down the middle because I don't want to have super huge chunks in there. So I kind of want them to dissolve into the cooking area. And then we will chop them up. And in just a second, I'll have you add some spices, Evie. That one. Okay, and now I'm going to cut off the ends of each side because those are a little dried out from being little like things. And this is going to be for our pot roast. We're just doing a prep now and get it in the oven, and then we'll come back in a little while for our second part of our stream, because pot roast is something that you just can't do very quick. It needs to cook slowly in the oven. Okay. We got our celery all chopped up here. And then let's see, we're going to give our meat a turn again.
Question, what's the cut of meat?
This is a chuck roast. So I find chuck roasts just make for the most delicious pot roast because they have a nice marbling of fat in them. And then they're so good. Okay. Now that we've got them about seared off, I'm going to transfer them back to my cutting board, but don't worry about it because we're putting this all back in here and it's going to cook in the oven for about 3 hours. So you don't have to worry about cross-contamination because this is all going to be cooked in a hot oven at 350 for about 3 hours. So you just kind of want to sear off like the top and bottom, and this is going to help your pot roast keep its form. Okay, now you ready? Can you pick up these onions and celery and just put them in that pot for me? Good job. You can pull them all in there. Fill it up. Yep. And while you're doing that, I'm going to peel my carrots because we're going to chop those up next. Lovely. See? You know, I will say, I always love cooking with my kids when I have the time because it's fun and nice to have extra help in there. Perfect. Now, do you want to grab a spoon out of there and you can stir it up? You can grab that one, the maroon one. And yep, you can do nice, slow, careful stirs. Yep, good job. And that way you can kind of coat it in that oil and that the meat drippings from when we seared it off. That way they can get nice and coated and cook up evenly. And there you go. I've got 2 more carrots left, and then we'll chop these up and we're going to add them to our onions and our celery as well. And this is making a really good, just kind of like a sauteed veggies that will season up the broth that we're cooking the meat in so that it will make for a delicious gravy and just great seasoning all over. Versus if you're just cooking the meat in its own juices. This is going to give you a really robust flavor. Okay. We're going to cut up our carrots here and we're going to add them in. So just like, we're going to take our tops off because you don't want those in our thing. And then we are going to add them in here. Good job, Evie. Okay. And we're going to cut right through. And there we go. And now I'm just going to chop up our carrots and we are going to add them to our onions and our celery that are sauteing up because you want to have them get all those nice flavors in there. There we go. And you don't have to worry about having a too precise of a thing. There we go. You're going to add that in. Perfect. You add those in and I will throw away these scraps. Good job. Yeah, perfect. Now you want to stir them up really well. Good job. And now we're going to add in our seasonings. Okay, do you want to add in a spoonful of garlic? Say a spoonful of garlic keeps not quite that much. A little less than that, that's a big spoonful. You want about a teaspoon of garlic in there. Good job. You want to shake it all off in there? And then we are going to add in some rosemary. So you want to add in the rosemary to it. And then we shake it about a teaspoon. So we're going to add in the teaspoon of rosemary in here. We're going to shake it in there. This is going to season it up really well. And then we're going to give it a couple shakes of black pepper. Good job. A little more. Want about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. Good job. And then, this is going to be the fun part. We're going to put 2 bay leaves in here and we're going to crush them up. Ooh. So these are leaves. They're seasoned leaves. And you're going to crush them up in here. Crush them like this. Here. You take that? And then we're going to do this. Crush them up. There we go. We've got our leaves all crushed up. Now you're going to give it a nice big stir. Stir those spices around. Good job. It smells very good. It does smell. That's the spices. That's the onions and the garlic and the celery in there. And now we're going to add in some fresh thyme. Because we're going to be stewing this meat the whole time, you don't need to pull the leaves off. So we're just going to, I'll take this and you want to just break them apart and just throw them in there. So that's some fresh thyme. Good job, Evie. And let me get my can opener. And then we are going to open up some tomato paste. And we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste to our sauteed veggie mix. Good job. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. So, you want to scoop out 2 spoonfuls? We got 1. You just shake it in there. Give it a nice shake. And you shake it in there good. And then we're going to, knock it down really good. It's sticky, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. Now stir all of that tomato in there until it is all mixed up. And this tomato, we're going to mix it with some red wine and some beef broth. And it will give it a really delicious flavor to it. And it will stew. And the acidity from the tomatoes will help make the beef nice and tender. The chuck roast really tender and delicious. Okay. Here, got 1 big clump right there. Can you mix that up? Yeah. And I will say it. If a 9-year-old can do it, you guys can do it too. It's really just doing simple stirring. There's nothing that you're doing that's super difficult technique, but you're going to have a really elevated pot roast that will be delicious. Okay, now we're going to put in some red wine. Want to help me pour it in? We need about a half a cup. There you go. Now stir that up nice.
Yeah,
Make sure.
How long do you need to cook the red wine out?
The red wine, we're going to be putting this in the oven for about 3 hours for our pot roast, so it will cook off. But red wine in general, it cooks off in about 5 minutes, and there will no longer be any alcohol content in it. But we will be cooking this for a long time too. It's just going to give you that nice flavor, but there won't be any alcohol. Good job. Okay, now we can put our meat chunks back in here. And you want to kind of coat them around in the veggies. Perfect. We don't need that anymore. And you want to just, I like to kind of shove them all in there. And then we are going to pour a little bit of water and then a scoop of beef bouillon over it. So I'm going to get my dish of here. We're going to put about 2 cups of water in. Okay. You got this, Evie?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to, yep, all of it in here. It's going to cover, it's not going to completely cover the meat, but it's going to go up to where the tippy tops is. And that's what you want. And then we're going to add in a big scoop of beef bouillon. This is going to give the saltiness to our meat as well as flavor it up because it's just going to be a delicious kind of gravy that you can then pour over our mashed potatoes that we're going to be eating tonight.
You have a question, Evie. Do you like this meal?
She does not care for this meal as much. She hates mashed potatoes, and we're having mashed potatoes with it. But I will.
I like the meat.
She likes the meat. I will. Hello, Teddy. This is Chef Teddy. Evie's helping us cook today.
So it's Chef Evie.
There we go. So I'm going to turn it off. We're going to put the lid on, and we're going to pop this in the oven, and we're going to cook it at 350 for about 3 hours. And then we'll come back in the evening, later this evening, to make the mashed potatoes and the green beans. I think Chef Teddy wants to come over. He can do our last little knead on our bagel dough. Okay, let me get you a paper towel. Wipe your hands off, buddy, okay? So that you can knead. Oh, yes. It's always fun. You got it? Are you ready to help me knead? Let me get your hands nice and clean. There you go. You going to climb up there? Okay, you ready? Here's our dough. Can you knead it for me, buddy? Let's roll up your sleeves. There you go. And you're going to roll. We're going to move it. You ready like this? I know you're trying to steal the sugar. I see you there. You ready? Can you mold it like Play-Doh?
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to do one more good kneading session. And then we're going to let it sit for about 30 minutes. And then just like with sourdough bread, you're going to do your stretch and folds. And we'll do that for another 2 hours every 30 minutes doing the stretch and folds. And then you just are going to let it sit and rise on the counter for about 8 to 12 hours. And then tomorrow, during our next shoot, we will... Are you stealing sugar? Are you stealing sugar? Yeah, he's stealing sugar. Little sugar thief over here. Yeah. Yeah, Evie showed you where the sugar is. But then we'll shape them into bagels. Then we let them rise for another hour once they're bagels. Then we will boil them in a water and honey bath and bake them up for our delicious bagels. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for part 1 of our dinner prep tonight. In about 2.5 hours or so, 2-3 hours, we will be doing the next part of dinner where we'll make our mashed potatoes, roasted green beans, bake our sourdough bread, and finish up our pot roast. Well, guys, thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and catch us next or later tonight at our next stream for the rest of dinner.